Good afternoon, everyone. I'm swapping this large picture of an eagle for a compass now. You'll be glad to hear probably that my talk will be somewhat shorter, and actually, if we talk about an in-house law, there's not really much law involved either. But just by way of brief introduction, so I'm Senior Legal Counsel at Siemens in the UK. I mainly look after our energy management division, which covers a range of things like transmission projects, smart cities, through to sort of quite basic products for use in the house. So I think I come to this feeling almost a bit like a sort of party pooper in a way, because quite a lot of what we do, certainly as in-house lawyers, is quite often trying to avoid some of these very interesting situations which lead to all this interesting case law and scenarios that I'm sure have been discussed in greater detail earlier today. I think also in terms of just sort of how this talk's going to play out, I'm going to talk really more about the kind of organisational ways in which you can work with lawyers. If many large companies and public sector bodies will have in-house departments these days, but at the same time, everything I'm saying I think would also apply equally to anyone who has to use a lawyer in a crisis situation. So if you do happen to be unlucky enough not to have an in-house lawyer, then don't despair. And also, as I say, it's not intended as a sales pitch for in-house lawyers in general. The only sales pitch I will make is if you haven't been downstairs yet to have a look at the exhibition before you leave here today, you really should. It's a wonderful exhibition about sustainability down there, which Siemens has created. So, where and how can an in-house legal department add most value in a crisis? Now, I think sort of thinking back to all the situations where I've been involved in a crisis and served colleagues, and it tends to be the case that you get involved in a variety of very different ways, and I'm sure that's the experience of people in the room as well. Sometimes you're involved nice and early on, and you can see kind of the problem potentially panning out in front of you, and you can direct how things should happen, and that's a very nice situation. But equally, you can quite often find you get called in at the last minute, and there's relatively little you can do because the crisis is already underway. And I think it's worth stating there's often an understandable desire on the part of companies, procuring authorities, and so on to resolve problems at the project level or within the tendering team, let's say halfway through a procurement exercise and they've spotted a problem. It's natural that people want to resolve that without bringing in the lawyers or going legal, and I do sympathise with that quite a bit. It is perhaps inevitable that early engagement with lawyers will slow things down, but I would argue that in the long run it will ultimately improve outcomes in the crisis. And just one example I remember was when I was working in a previous job advising a public authority, and some quick advice very early on about the fact that they might need to think about re-advertising material variation to an existing contract really helped avoid a situation which could have become very embarrassing down the line if they'd just gone ahead, done a nice easy variation with the existing contractor, and then been challenged and had all the aggravation that comes with that down the line. So you have to look at short-term, mid-term, long-term objectives, and as I say, get the lawyers involved early, involve them in steering groups, working parties. Generally, one of the sort of first rules of crisis management tends to be to sort of establish a review team, call it what you will, and I think it's pretty much these days accepted that it's automatically that the lawyers should be involved in that. I think the lawyers can add value, and it's really a natural part of the The approach to resolving any crisis is kind of invariably going to be a multifactorial approach, and legal considerations, in my experience, are often only one of the considerations which will be informing management's decision on how they actually resolve a crisis. Now, in other cases, again, depending on the scenario, the legal considerations may be decisive, but the lawyer, the in-house lawyer, can play a key role at an early stage in defining what those legal issues are, and also where does the organisation want to get to through this crisis. Now, it could be that there are cases where it's so critical what the organisation wants to do that you just have to plough on through the crisis and accept that you might get some collateral damage. In other cases, your reputational or your regulatory requirements might be that you say, right, we're going to stop, go back to the beginning. Say, for example, in the tender process, reissue the tender. That's an example that was given earlier. And the lawyers will usually be very well placed to help identify these issues. And I think on a kind of more softer level, I think lawyers, by their training, can be quite good at cutting through some of the inevitable emotional baggage that often develops in a crisis. Those of us who've been involved in crisis management know that it's not a pleasant time. People often will have their own, within an organisation, will have their own reputation on the line, their work may be challenged, people will become defensive. A good in-house lawyer should be able to cut through some of that without sort of attributing blame to people, but just to identify what the issues are and where do we need to move to. And I think another key aspect of what in-house lawyers can do quite well is to spot where you need to involve other experts in the team. Again, people like to try and resolve their problems at a project level. An in-house lawyer will often see, well, we need to also involve people from other departments. So, for example, it might be that you need to get your communications and your PR department involved, regulatory department, and so on, depending on the nature of the crisis. And finally, on this section of the talk, I would say that actually one valuable function of the in-house lawyer in this country is that in-house lawyers do have legal professional privilege. So you can have those frank discussions, put things down on paper, in conversation with the lawyer seeking legal advice without fear of that being subsequently disclosed in proceedings. Now, that's not the case, obviously, in many other jurisdictions, particularly in continental Europe. And some, say, pitfalls I would suggest where we get things wrong, perhaps, as lawyers, where there's been perhaps some interesting examples of this. Unclear lines of communication in a crisis can cause real problems. And as an example, I remember brought this home a few years ago when the Department for Transport were procuring the franchise for the West Coast Main Line. It was Virgin and other bidders in the running. And that was a real crisis because they ended up cancelling their procurement process, having to refund bidders something like £40 million. And there was a report done subsequently by Sam Laidlaw, who was one of the independent directors there. And it's quite an interesting report, actually, if you want to sort of see how procurement crisis can unfold. But one of the points that he picked up on, particularly in relation to the work of the lawyers in that, the lawyers were all over the procurement. And at one stage, the external lawyers spotted a lack of transparency in the process in terms of how different franchise bids were being evaluated. And that external lawyer did flag the problem in the meeting. And then also, probably raised the internal lawyers as well who have been involved. And the problem was, though, it was raised at the end of an unconnected training day. And the report records there was a conflict of evidence between the internal lawyers and the external lawyers as to what was said and how much emphasis was given to it. And ultimately, the issue wasn't escalated to a sufficiently senior level in time within the department. And I think that's an interesting example of who are you communicating to and who are you escalating to. And so you need to have those clear lines, and where there is a important communication, it has to be absolutely clear that you're not just passing the buck, it has to go further. Another example of where lawyers can sometimes get it wrong is it's very naturally easy, I think, when you're working closely with a project team and you're driven towards wanting your organisation to succeed, that you can get very close to the crisis or the project, call it what you will. And it's very important that for the lawyers to retain that sense of detachment and independence from what's going on, so that you can give very clear and unbiased advice. And I suspect many people here would have read or been interested in the recent nuclear decommissioning case, very lengthy judgment there, another procurement crisis, if you like. And there was quite harsh criticism of the in-house lawyers for one of the parties in that case, where they'd ended up getting obviously so close to, so wrapped up in what they were doing that they got involved in advising on and even signing, I think, agreements with witnesses which kind of incentivised witnesses to give evidence. And that's clear, it was heavily criticised in the judgment. So that's an extreme example, perhaps, but we all need to retain that sense of attachment. And finally, I would just say he also wanted to try and do too much. I mean, many people in-house lawyers will already have a full plate of things that they're trying to do otherwise, and when a crisis comes, I think to manage it effectively, you really need to sort of clear the diary from other things and step out from other things, and we can all be guilty perhaps sometimes trying to do too much. So finally, I will close on just a little note about what can an in-house lawyer add beyond the purely legal, because I think that's perhaps one of the interesting areas of why do you hire, why do you have an in-house lawyer, what does it add beyond being generally cheaper than external lawyers. And I think when you see a crisis happening, in-house lawyer will generally have a view across the whole company. You can call it a bird's eye view of what's happening across the company, and may know, oh, well, we've seen that before, that crisis, and we had a similar incident there. You know the pitfalls. That sort of corporate memory, as I call it, is very useful. And an in-house lawyer should also have a very good understanding of that, their organisation's culture, its priorities, where it sees its reputation standing. So, for example, you'll have a number of organisations that might be quite happy to, for example, litigate in a procurement crisis. There's good grounds for doing that. It's important, for example, to say that you're not going to be messed with, that you won't sort of suffer an injustice. And then there are other organisations that would run very scared of taking some of the tactics that, for example, were being discussed in the talk before, because that's just not how a lot of organisations like to do business, especially say with their public sector clients who are regular return customers. If they thought that they were going to be sort of issuing proceedings, immediately they lost or felt they had any sort of rough treatment in the tender, then that can often damage a long-term relationship. And an in-house lawyer should have an understanding of that, so that you know if the organisation really thinks you need to take legal action in a procurement crisis, that actually this is really where we need it. And my final observation is, and this partly relates back to the example I gave earlier, the DFT example, is in-house lawyers should have very good ability through their internal network connections to be able to escalate problems before you get into too far into a crisis. So I would just close with the words that you should really try and keep your in-house lawyer close. That's all.